Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Chris's Adventure Stories. Thanks for coming along. On my last video, I was talking about my trip to Israel with Nicole. We got to live there for 7 months and got some really cool volunteer opportunities out there. And I'm sure we would have stayed there longer, but we found out that we were pregnant and we had to figure out what we were going to do next in life. I kind of felt this burden of responsibility in me that I needed to maybe find an actual career now. I'd been doing tower work and construction and these different traveling gigs, and I needed to find something different than that. We considered having our baby out in Israel, but opted to come back to the U.S. So not really sure what else to do. We decided to come back to Minnesota, to Duluth, and I figured, maybe my family could kind of help us out. This was going to be the first grandkid of the family. So we found a little rental back in Duluth and kind of settled in there, getting ready for the new baby. And I needed to get to work. Found this traveling gig out in New York City, which, as I say it now, seems ridiculous that I was going to just leave Nicole in Duluth. But I figured she was in good hands with my family, all kind of surrounding her right there. So I took this job out in New York, building cell towers and working on them. And Nicole, meanwhile, stayed in our little apartment in West Duluth. As you might imagine, I didn't last long doing this gig. I was out there for maybe 2 or 3 months. Nicole ended up coming out and visiting me when she was very pregnant, and we kind of had some fun out there. Some of my memorable times in New York was one time circling the entirety of Manhattan Island along the beach, and it was about 30 miles and took me all day. It was kind of a fun little adventure, and there's some good bouldering in Central Park, so we did that sometimes. We saw a show on Broadway, and I think I went to the Dave Letterman show once, and we also enjoyed watching the Giants win the Super Bowl. That was really exciting. We were just right across the street in Rutherford, New Jersey, and so New York was kind of ablaze with with excitement for their winning the Super Bowl. So that was fun. But ultimately, I didn't last out there long and came back to Duluth to figure out, I needed to do something different. So my brother-in-law was working at this company in Duluth building dielectric boom trucks. So I started working there as a factory assembler, and this is one of my more fascinating jobs that I've ever had. I got to learn how to build hydraulic systems and put together the boom tip on these big boom trucks. Is really fascinating. My responsibility was all the platform controls and functions and hydraulics on the boom tip itself, and it was kind of a fun and interesting deal. Did that for a few months. Also, while we were in Duluth, our friends Chris and Julie Doolin decided to also come out there, and we're living in another apartment kind of in downtown. And so the 4 of us kind of hung out like we used to, and they were actually pregnant also with their first baby on the way. And they decided to attempt a home birth as well, and we were going to do a home birth with a home birth midwife, and that was kind of the big thing Nicole wanted to do to accomplish in life, is she wanted to have her babies at home. And we did end up having a successful home birth with the midwife, so that was a very proud moment for Nicole and and I was real proud of her for doing it. No drugs or anything, just totally hardcore. We didn't even know if it was a boy or girl or anything. We didn't have a name. I think we thought it was a girl, and so we had a girl's name picked out, but it was a boy, so Sam was unnamed there for a day or two. But as soon as he was born, I took him on his first little adventure. We were living in this little apartment next to a creek and some waterfalls, and I took the newborn baby to the waterfalls because he just kept crying and kind of stuck his head like right next to the waterfall, and it kind of seemed to soothe him. But this was kind of the precursor to my next several months with new baby Sammy. I loved putting him in my little snuggly wrap carrier, and we'd go on all sorts of little adventures. I took him out climbing and mountain biking, and we did a bunch of like winter hiking when it was super cold, and had a lot of fun doing that kind of stuff. So also with Chris and Julie out there, now they had their new baby as well, and so the four of us, or I guess now the six of us, we'd often go out climbing. Chris and I were working on developing all these new climbing areas in Duluth at the time. Duluth had already had some activity with climbing, but there was a lot of untapped potential. So we were excited to kind of cut in some trails and do some cleaning and establish some new bouldering areas. And of course, we'd take our babies and wives out there and kind of play at the base of these boulders, and had a great time and a great half a year living in Duluth doing all that kind of stuff. One day I was attending a climbing competition with Chris, and he was actually competing in it, and I think he was about to win the comp, but we had kind of gotten in with a little climbing group there in Duluth, and turned out that some of these guys were planning a trip to Chile. They had found some newly developing area of big wall climbing that was just kind of on the on the fringe, and nobody had really done much climbing there, and there was a lot of untapped potential. So they invited me along to go with. I had already done some first ascents, and they knew about what I had been doing in the past. So I was like, well, sure, I'll give it a shot. But once again, with the new baby on the way, I wasn't really thinking in the mode of being a dad yet. I was just kind of still in my old ways of going on these climbing trips. So I told him yeah, and I ended up joining up with these guys. Simultaneously, in preparation for this trip, I also realized, I needed to find like a better career. And I was also realizing like we probably weren't going to last in Duluth much longer. I don't know if just the fact that I had grown up there, I felt like I needed to move on. We weren't really getting the help we had been expecting from family anyways. They kind of all had their own things going on in life, and that was fine. But we were feeling the desire to just kind of branch off on our own and live our own life and kind of be a little more autonomous. So I started researching different careers, and I wasn't sure what to do. I'd remember taking this aptitude test in high school or something like that of like, careers that you should do, and pilot had been one of them. And I'd always been kind of fascinated with the idea of what it might be like to be a pilot. And after doing some more research, I kind of landed on the idea of trying to become a helicopter pilot. In my mind, I guess I thought like, yeah, cool, I can maybe travel around with the family, go fly helicopters. Sounds like a great gig. And I found this helicopter school out in Washington State to go pursue my training and start a new life out there. I'd never been out to Washington State, and it looked like a fascinating area and lots of mountaineering objectives. So I was kind of intrigued by that. So we kind of settled on a plan to head out there. And then right before we were going to head out there, though, I was going to do this trip to Chile. So I arrived in Santiago, Chile, and I was by myself. I was definitely immediately lonely for my family. I was feeling like, what am I doing here by myself, just meeting up with a bunch of other guys that don't have babies or wives or anything like that. And I was kind of there to help facilitate the expedition and help out where I could, but I wasn't too psyched to be there. But anyways, landed in Santiago and took a long bus ride down to Puerto Montt, which is in the Patagonia region of Chile. And then from there, I loaded up on a donkey with all my climbing gear, all my supplies, loaded up a bunch of groceries for the guys. So they had already been there for a few days, kind of scoping out the scene. And when I got to the base camp, this guy Jim told me about this new valley that they had discovered. He had been on another climb that had already been climbed before, and from the top he could look across the valley and saw this enormous valley that had never even been penetrated through the jungle. And it had like apparently 1,000 and 2,000 foot cliffs that had never been climbed before. So they were really excited about that. They had been hacking a trail through all the bamboo to get back there. So by the time I got there, they sort of blazed the trail and we were ready to get to work. So we loaded up all our supplies and hiked way back to this remote valley, and it was pretty fascinating. I mean, I had done first ascents before, but of course these had been on walls that had lots of climbs. But here I was walking into a valley where on the left and the right there were huge, 1,000 to 2,000 foot big walls on both sides that had never been climbed before at all. So it was quite the experience. So I just kind of, kid in the candy store looking around like, what are we going to climb? So immediately this cliff on the right looked fascinating to me, and I just kind of picked a plumb line that went right up the middle. It was like the nose route, like right up the center prow of this cliff, and I think it was maybe 1,800 feet long, something like that. But I recruited this guy Tyler, another guy from Duluth area, to go climb with me. And we spent 4 days on the wall. I kind of let him just do all the leading. He was really new to aid climbing, and I don't think he'd even ever been on a big wall before. I don't think he'd camped on the wall. So I wanted him to just like have the experience of it, and I was just gonna be kind of along for the ride. So I just jugged behind. But we got into a little bit of rain up there. But after couple days on the wall, I was realizing I need to get home. So as soon as I got off of this wall, I told the guys, like, I'm sorry, there's like tons of lines you guys are, I'm sure, going to climb here and establish, and this quite the experience for you guys, but I need to get back to my family. So eventually these guys did stay for a couple more weeks. I left my portaledge with them, and they were able to get a lot accomplished. It kind of made a splash. They were able to get some publications about it, and that was definitely exciting. And I was excited to have been able to participate with them in that. But headed back early, back to Minnesota, and I was very happy to reunite with my family. And I was kind of realizing, like, this was a new mode of life, and I still had the desire to go on adventures. But I wanted to do these adventures with my family. So in my mind, this idea of flying helicopters and going to different, remote camps or something with the family in tow it sounded like a fascinating idea. So we loaded up our supplies and headed out to Washington State. And this was going to be our next adventure to see how we might make this work. And that's where I'll leave this video, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks.